Your home for the best college football coverage in Utah is on the KSL Sports Zone. Ready? The Cougars hit the road for a huge matchup against SMU. Your home for the best coverage of Cougar football is right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, want to remind you about First and 12, Sunday afternoon from 10 to noon, brought to you by Macy's Grocery Store. Get the freshest fruits and vegetables from local farms and your favorite local brands. Macy's, happy shopping. BYU, SMU coming up tomorrow. Ben, let's get out to the zone phone. Joining us now, he covers SMU and college sports for LoneStarLive.com. He's Jacob Richman with us here on Jake and Ben. Jacob, what's going on, buddy?
Not too much. Thank you guys so much for having me on. Really excited for this matchup. I think it's going to be a fun one, and looking forward to BYU visiting Dallas.
There's a lot of people in Utah wondering what SMU is as a football team, because obviously the first week against Nevada, week 0, was not a very impressive performance. Need to outscore Nevada by 16 in the fourth quarter to come back and win that game. But they seem to be a totally different animal at home, where they put up a ton of points and seem to beat basically everybody. Who are they?
Yeah, I think that's something that us here in Dallas, we're also still trying to figure out. And I think that this game is a really good measuring stick for them because, yeah, they've been really strong at home recently, but this is also a big opportunity for them to finally get a power conference win. They haven't won a game against a power conference team at home since 2010. It's been a while since they've been able to pull that off, and I think that this is their kind of real first chance to show that they can compete with bigger, stronger athletes, not just kind of what they've been doing in the AAC these past few years. So, I think we know what they're good at. It's about seeing how consistently they can do that.
I know everybody down there is really high on Coach Lashley and what he's building and the success he's had. What has he done right? What has he done differently than other coaches before?
I think with Lashley, you see a real commitment to making SMU a brand again, making SMU what Dallas is known for. And it's not gonna happen overnight. It's certainly not gonna be finished at the end of this year. But I think he understands that we're in a hot spot for high school and college sports, and that SMU obviously not being in a power conference certainly has hurt it, but they've not really been able to take the opportunity to come back since the death penalty and announce we're going to be committed. We're gonna put out a good football team. We're going to compete with top level opponents. So I think he's not really shied away from that at all. You're seeing that with his upcoming recruiting class. 2025 is set to be one of the best, in history, but definitely the best since in the modern recruiting era. And I think that all goes down to what the coaching staff's doing right now.
BYU gave up 121 yards on the ground to DJ Williams, the Southern Illinois quarterback, and that's a fear going into this game. But how much of a threat with their legs are Preston Stone and Kevin Jennings?
I think they're both solid mobile quarterbacks. I think Kevin Jennings is probably the one that you look at and you're like, if someone was going to break out and go on these big runs, be that, a constant threat in that game, it's going to be Kevin. He's a little bit faster. He's not afraid to improvise at all. With Preston, it's more of he's really good at moving and extending the pocket, being able to extend his plays to go out and wait for a receiver to get open, but he's not afraid to go take off downfield. So they certainly offer a threat there. But it's going to kind of depend on just how much SMU uses each one of them.
We had Jim McMahon on our station earlier this week. Are people still familiar with the history between these two teams? I mean, does the name Jim McMahon still, inspire a shudder?
I think a little bit. I think I'll be honest. I think that with the recent history is more what a lot of people in and around the team have been thinking about. I think that 2022 bowl game has been a surprisingly big talk about. I know the New Mexico Bowl is maybe not the grandest stage, but it was an important game at the start of this new era of SMU where they're really trying to reassert themselves and talk about a revenge game and the fact that they are 0-4 all time against BYU. I think they really. I've honestly started to see this game as being a little bit more important than some of the ones that many people going into the season would have thought of, like the Florida States and the Louisvilles.
What's the expectation for SMU's defense? We know they can score the ball, and they're going to come out and they're going to put up, at least 30 points. I think is a very fair expectation. Can their defense hold BYU below that?
I think the defense has been really interesting these first 2 weeks. Last year they were they were dominant. They were the reason that SMU won their conference championship game. They're the reason that they made it to 11 wins. They brought back so much talent and then just added in the transfer portal to really try and beef up the line of scrimmage. I think that week 1 game you watched and you were a little bit underwhelmed, but I also think that they were put in some tough situations by the offense, struggling at the open. And I'll say one of their, I think, biggest deficits is that they struggle with those mobile quarterbacks, the quarterbacks who extend the play if they're not able to break down the pocket fast enough and they're able to go make something happen. But this past weekend, Houston Christian, obviously FCS opponent, but they were able to get those turnovers. Turnovers were really big last year. I think they had at least one in their last 10 games and normally had multiple. So I think the big thing to watch for with SMU's defense, because they're more than capable of it, is making those big plays, being able to grab the interception, being able to strip sacks are a really big part of their game. SMU's got a great group of edge rushers that know how to, break a pocket down quickly. If they can get to, quarterback, get to Retzlaff quickly, I think that's when they're really going to start cooking.
What kind of environment can the Cougars and Cougar fans expect?
So it'll be unique because, we got a Friday game, and I'll be the first one to say this. Friday nights do belong to high school football in Texas. That's never going to change. I hope it never changes. That's what we're known for. But I think that the excitement behind the program means that, it's going to be a pretty strong turnout. The student section was pretty phenomenal last week. It's only, I think it's a 5,000 undergrad at school there, and they had, I believe, about 4,000 students at this past game for an FCS opponent. So, and they get sat right behind the BYU bench. So I think they can expect, that there'll be some excitement. Don't expect, the numbers you'd find from a massive state school, but that people are as energized as ever about SMU right now.
What type of a weapon is Brashard Smith? How much of a known factor is he transferring over from Miami last year?
Well, he was recruited out of high school by Rhett Lashley to Miami, so the coaching staff was super familiar with him. But obviously, he was being used as a wide receiver and return specialist primarily at Miami, and then he arrives at SMU, and they say, "Hey, we think that running back is the way to go." And as I was watching it, you could tell he can do a lot anytime he gets the ball. But I think even I was surprised at just how much he could do in the run game. He's incredibly explosive, bounces off of defenders really easily. It's a different level of running backs than I think SMU had last year, even though they returned some solid running backs who know how to be explosive, who know how to chunk out yardage. Brashard Smith's averaging, I think, almost 9 yards a carry. And we'll see if that keeps up. I think BYU will 100% be the toughest defense that they've faced so far and are going to be a lot more stingy with him. But if he finds a gap, he's going to be trouble.
Has membership in the ACC been the differences in, recruiting or however you want to take it? Have the differences been immediate and noticeable? Yeah,
I mean, it's night and day. The kind of players that they're able to get both in the transfer portal and in recruiting right now, their 25 recruiting class lined up. I think they're going to have 4 or 5 4-stars right now, and they've had, I think, 2 in the past decade or so. It's completely alter the game because players want to come and play the Florida States, the Miamis, the Clemsons for at least as long as they, are in the ACC. We'll see how that all pans out. But it's really changed the game for them. And when it comes to transfers, they've been able to kind of hone in on this concept of bringing back, Dallas natives, people who played high school in and around the area, who went off to other schools and are now like, hey, I want to come play at home. And I want to play for a big team. I think they've got some big players like Deuce Harmon from A&M and Ashton Kozart, someone you might not see too much of on Friday, but he's a really exciting receiver that went to Oregon for a year, didn't quite work out. He's at SMU, and he's looking really exciting.
You mentioned Retzlaff and his ability to keep plays alive and how that could be a problem for SMU. What else that BYU does or may threaten to do would cause concern for SMU?
I think it's going to be probably primarily just if Retzlaff is really on the money with his throws. I think that SMU plays solid in the secondary, but sometimes leaves just a little bit too much space. And if they, play the right quarterback who's really able to find those gaps, because I think that the secondary struggles to kind of lock down on any kind of man coverage. I think that it really opens up the opportunity for, kind of an elite level passing performance to really break them down on defense.
It's amazing to look at the ACC and how this schedule could really open up for SMU. And I know they're coming off of, an 11-win season last year, but you got BYU and TCU coming up. And then, FSU looks terrible. We don't know what Louisville's going to be. Stanford's not good. Duke's not very good. Pitt's not very good. Boston College beat Florida State, but that might not be anything. And then they finish with Virginia and Cal. It's just like, man, they get through these next couple of games, they could really, really benefit SMU. They could have a special season on their hands.
Yeah, you look at the schedule, and it certainly doesn't look as daunting as I think most people would think of a power conference schedule. But I think that they still have a lot of prove me games, left on before that. You can really, I think, start considering it to be that level. Because something that Rhett Lashley's talked about, like they don't see themselves as favorites in any game the rest of the way. Starting with BYU, SMU is about to play 10 straight power conference opponents. They haven't done that in, I believe, 40, 50 years at this point. It's just not something that anyone who's with the program really, knows about, at least other than, players who may have transferred over. There's going to be a really big learning curve for not just the players, who have only been at SMU, but the coaching staff. And I think you look at it and you can start to get a little excited, but I think you want to see them start to put together these consistent performances. And then you start talking about, okay, is SMU really here? Because it's undoubtedly a really talented roster, the most talented one they've had since the Southwest Conference days. But they have to put it all together. I think as you see at places like Florida State, you can't just win from the transfer portal. There needs to be, a good connection between school transfers and getting it on the field.
Jacob, thank you very much. Enjoy the game tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Appreciate you having me on.
Appreciate you. There's Jacob Richman, covers SMU and college sports for LoneStarLive.com.
I just think SMU's going to score, and that puts a lot of pressure on Retzlaff and this offense to step up. And BYU's defense can be better and can play well, and I still think SMU's going to score. It's what they do. It's what the team is designed to do.
Yeah. We'll see. I'm curious to how good BYU's defense is, honestly.
It's a huge question.
Everybody gets focused on Retzlaff and his performance. It was good reason, but the defense certainly had room to improve from last season.
Middle of the pack in college football last year.
They could take a step forward. Jay Hill, we hope he's doing well. Year two, I would expect some noticeable improvement. And I'm not necessarily, I don't know. Maybe SMU is a little more for real than I'm giving them credit because other people seem to believe in them more. But I'm not convinced they're awesome.
This is brand new for them. they're back in a Power 5 conference. They're playing all these teams back to back to back that they've
Yeah.
never done before. That's a big deal.
But it's the ACC.
It is. Those are terrible teams. But
they're used
still,
to the AAC. Now they get the ACC team.
regardless,
little
yeah,
difference.
the ACC is better than the American.
Kind of.
It is, but it actually reminds me a lot of Utah's schedule their first year in the Pac-12. And remember, everything just kind of broke their way. And had they made a field goal or two against Colorado, they would have won it in their first year. I think you might be looking at that with SMU. And then I look back at, teams that can score against everybody. Generally, they don't have great defenses, so is BYU able to go and put some points up on them? Because BYU is designed to be able to score as well.
All right, they do play Florida State in their first game. We'll see. And then they go at Louisville, who's a top 25 team right now. So, yeah, sure. But then at Stanford, at Duke, home against Pitt, Boston College at home, at UVA, and Cal at home.
Yep. Easy. They avoid Miami.
That's nothing.
Right? They avoid Clemson.
Yep.
Pretty good.
So they get Florida State and Louisville. But then, yeah, road game at Stanford. They should be able to win that.
Absolutely.
Road game at Duke.
No, honestly, they should win double-digit games this year. As long as they don't fall to BYU and TCU, they should be looking at another 10-plus win season.
So thanks to Jacob for jumping on with us. And I'm eager to see it tomorrow. That is for sure. All right, we'll have more Jake and Ben coming up next. Stay tuned. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Your home for the best college football coverage in Utah is on the KSL Sports Zone. Ready? The Cougars hit the road for a huge matchup against SMU. Your home for the best coverage of Cougar football is right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Someday, when my life has passed me by, I'll lay around and wonder why you were always there for me.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake Scott, Ben Anderson. Ben, do you think doesn't need to be the topic of the segment per se, but do you think that Belichick's going to go back to coaching? I kind of think he's not. I'll tell you why in a second, but do you think?
I think he would take a job, and I guess somebody will feel like they need a quick fix and will go to Belichick, and he'll be fine. I do think there is the issue of the clash of he wants so much power, and it's going to be hard for somebody to give it up to him.
I mean, this isn't really here nor there, but he went on, I guess, with Armpit and talked about how Massachusetts taxes are so high it impacted the Patriots negatively during NFL free agency. Talked about the millionaire tax and called it Taxachusetts, which is hilarious. But honestly, if this guy were politicking for a job, he wouldn't be saying stuff like this. I've told you I like it when coaches get beyond the give a what.
Yeah.
Line, whatever that is. And if he were truly hoping for another bite at the apple, I don't think he's getting loose with Armpit about Massachusetts taxes. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But we were kind of talking about this off the air, that he's taken this weird life turn where he's dating a much younger woman.
A 21-year-old. He thinks he's Leo all of a sudden.
He had this weird, did you watch the Tom Brady roast? It was a weird side of Belichick that came out there. I wonder if he's, like, let me put it this way, and beware my comparison here, I suppose. But I got a chance working with Coach Lacombe to see his journey away from coaching. And now Coach did not make the same decisions that Bill is currently making. But to see Coach like, spending Thanksgiving with my family is pretty sweet.
Lovely.
It's pretty nice. Not having to answer the phone 24/7 for the next 3-alarm fire within the program, which is what college coaching is. I mean, it's, Chris Peterson once said at Pac-12 Media Day that he's like, we've all put our careers in the hands of America's dumbest demographic. Who knows what he's dealt with over the years, being my point. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so watching Coach kind of be like, oh, okay, well, not being in that world is there. It comes with some nice benefits. You know, Bill Belichick doesn't have to work another day in his life. Spend the rest of his life on the beach in Maui with his younger life partner. And it's pretty good. You know what I mean?
It's hard
pretty
to
good.
go away from.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I just wonder if we will see him coach again. Because I do think there are those coaches that are such egomaniacs that are so sick they just can't leave it. I wonder if Belichick is one of those.
I do think he is. I think he's such an egomaniac that he would have a hard time saying no, and I'm just trying to figure out the right job for him.
But Urban Meyer should have kept doing whatever he was doing and not taking the Jacksonville job. You know what I mean? If he weren't such a sick person, he should have been like, you know what? That's not going to work.
The weird thing for these guys is they kind of have permanent job security of being able to fall back to the media, which Urban did. Urban could always go back and do
like
Big
5
Noon
times.
Sunday and will always be hired. Belichick is the same way. He will always have a primetime spot wherever he wants to. If he wanted to do Sunday Night Football, they would hire him. If he wanted to do ESPN Monday Night Football, they would hire him. And we could charge Amazon whatever he wanted to do Thursdays. So that, in a sense, allows him to take whatever bad job he wants. I'm just thinking, though, like, the most obvious job to me is the Cowboys, right? Jerry wants to make a splash. He hates his coach. He thinks he always has a Super Bowl roster, and the coaches don't get there, which is why he always cycles through these guys and throws them under the bus. The problem is Jerry won't take his grimy little fingers off of his football team, and that wouldn't jive very well with Bill Belichick.
Well, you could say the same thing about Bill Parcells, and then Jerry and Bill had at least semi-functional relationship before. So
is Bill's ego big enough and his cachet big enough that Jerry would step away from it? Maybe Jerry would have the wherewithal to say, hey, let me trust this guy to do what he has to do.
But if I'm Bill, I don't want any part of that
No,
mess.
and also that's the other part of it.
He's like 1,000 years old, Bill Belichick. I mean, I just wonder. Like, I truly believe that Coach Witt will retire with some life left to live. He's said that for a long time. I don't know when that's going to be, but he's not going to coach until he's 85. I don't think, and God, this is weird to bring up, but I don't think it's a coincidence that Joe Paterno died like 3 months after he left the job at Penn State.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was him. He was going to stand on that sideline until there was, no more life to live. I wonder where Belichick is in that. Have you thought about this? I wonder if Andy Reid would ever retire. He's been coaching forever.
That's another spot where I could see if Andy Reid stepped away and they wanted to just keep the championship window over. If Andy Reid stepped away while this team was still in its prime with Mahomes and Kelsey, and he said, yeah, Belichick will step up and do it, maybe. But even then, I wonder if I'm the Chiefs owner, if I would throw volatility that is Bill Belichick, which is funny to say because he's probably the best NFL coach of all time. He's at least in the conversation. Would you throw the volatility of Bill Belichick into that conversation? I might not. Andy's great strength is he's pretty neutral.
How volatile is Bill Belichick, though? Why are we saying volatility there? We could talk to Christian Cox right now. They all love playing for him.
I mean, he and Tom Brady notoriously didn't get along towards the end. Yeah. He and Kraft didn't get along towards the end. I mean, now you're talking about owner.
Yeah, that doesn't
coach,
make him
quarterback is pretty serious trio.
I got you, but that doesn't make him the vulnerable one in that trio. Or vulnerable, volatile. That's what I meant. That doesn't necessarily mean he's the volatile one.
I do certainly think that's how it was painted in.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean
in New
anything.
England, whether it's right or not. That's how it was painted.
You just talked about how volatile Jerry Jones is. Would Bill Belichick be the volatile one? You never know how relationships work. And egos get involved and who is responsible and all this. And it's obvious that Brady and Kraft were on one team and Belichick was on the other. That doesn't make Brady and Kraft right.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So I don't know how volatile Belichick is. I mean, I don't know. He seemed pretty stable to me, actually.
I thought so, too. But that wasn't, again, how he was painted on his way out the door. So if there is a question about it, would you throw him into Cincinnati, even though I think Zach Taylor's a really good coach? Would you throw him into Kansas City if Andy Reid retires? Would you throw him into a championship contender?
No, I wouldn't hire him at all. Absolutely not. I wouldn't want the media circus. I would
that's
say
part
no.
Of volatility. That's part of it.
I would say no to it because of the automatic. Like you sign Tim Tebow, you're going to get a circus of people asking questions that aren't relevant and that you're not particularly wild about answering. And people like Ben are going to talk about like who's really calling the shots in Dallas? Is it Jerry Jones or is it Bill Belichick? I mean, it just automatically becomes a thing, even if it were not even a thing. But I would say that Belichick's greatest strength in New England was his lack of volatility from a standpoint of he's the coldest dude ever.
He is.
He's not emotional. He would cut his favorite player on the roster if it made sense from a competitive standpoint. Did do it. Like he wasn't volatile. He didn't overreact. He didn't do any of that stuff. I thought that was maybe his greatest strength. He just was paired with a quarterback like a lot of great coaches. I mean, Phil Jackson was paired with Michael Jordan. I mean, you get paired with those players, that's going to be a really delicate conversation. And obviously it was important to Brady to get the credit because that's why he went somewhere else. Yeah. It was important to him to demonstrate, all this historic success was because of your boy here, not because of Bill. That's not Bill's fault.
No. 49ers probably also make some sense for Bill.
But I don't know. If I'm him, I don't coach again.
I kind of think he does one weird random year, 2 years randomly somewhere just to kind of show he still has it and then is done. I kind of think he does coaching.
That usually doesn't go well for coaches.
It doesn't,
though.
And I don't expect it to go well for Bill either, but guys don't know when to say goodbye.
I wonder what the best example of that going well is. Dick Vermeil with the Rams. That went well. But even like if we want to talk about Bill Parcells with Dallas, that didn't go that. It went okay, but they didn't win a Super Bowl. If memory serves, they didn't get particularly close.
Would you count Bruce Arians?
No.
I mean, he won it in Tampa.
Yeah,
and had stepped away, but because he had a heart attack on the sidelines, right?
And he stunk at Arizona. So, no, I would not.
Yeah, he didn't have like a crazy long career. He's not this legend.
I'm not talking about
he's a really good coach.
I'm not talking about retreads necessarily.
I'm talking about going away, coming back.
And going somewhere else.
I mean, the best example of it working really well is Herm Edwards at Arizona State. Nailed it.
Is it?
Stepped back in, showed he still had it, and got out while the get was sweet.
You know what? Andy Reid might be it. He won at a really high level with Philly.
Even then, he felt unproven when he took the Kansas City job, in the sense that like he'd never gotten to the mountaintop. He'd never crossed over.
Yeah.
We're talking about Parcells, particularly Belichick. They are going to unquestionably be at their second highest level. They could never get back to the peak. Not the peak of, even if they were to have won a Super Bowl in their second stop, Belichick can never outmatch what he did in
Well, yeah, he's not going to live long enough.
But yeah, right. He's not going to coach there for 20 years and win 6 titles or whatever it was. He could never, maybe even if you were to win one Super Bowl, it would not match what you did in New England. So your second stop is always going to be a little bit lesser. And I know technically it's Bill's like 5th stop, but what we're saying.
If Andy Reid does leave, he's taking a retirement job at BYU. Take that gig. Head coach.
Certainly what people seem to hope for.
You know what I would do seriously if I were Kalani? I'd call Andy Reid and I'd say, give me your bright, young offensive coach who knows the West Coast offense inside and out, and I want to take them as an intern for 1 year to teach everybody in the building how to run the West Coast offense. That's what I do. I don't care if he's 28. I want that coach. Just an intern. We're not going to pay him anything. We're going to pay him in cougar tails, and we'll send him back to you after the year.
Boy, that's a hard offer to pass up. You're not going to pay me anything, and I'm going to come and have to do all the work for a year?
Well, yeah, and he's going to make him do it. That's the point. That's exactly my point. You want to work for the Chiefs sometime? Well, yeah, you're going to have to go do this.
Go do this for a year.
You've got a year.
Do me a solid.
It's like getting transferred in soccer. It's like you got a year down there, and then you'll come back here, and I'll find a spot for you. I'll fire the Whittingham kid and hire you.
I don't know if that's going to work out for him.
I'm just kidding.
I don't know if that's a great game plan.
I think that's what BYU should do. Get back to playing BYU football. But we'll see what happens against SMU coming up tomorrow. I'm hoping we see Retzlaff sling it all over the field. I'm hoping we see another aggressive, confident performance like we did in Game 1. I don't know. The guest, Jacob Richman, who we had on earlier, seemed pretty confident about SMU's defense, but he seemed kind of confident about everything. SMU is actually the 74 Dolphins. But anyway, I'd love to see. I think he should. I think BYU should move the ball at will. And I'm not talking about the run game. I'm talking about throwing it to those receivers.
He said if SMU is susceptible anywhere, it is quarterbacks who can keep plays alive with their legs and quarterbacks who can attack through the air. Well, BYU has a really good wide receiving core, maybe their most talented room
certainly
on the entire
offensively.
team. And a quarterback can keep plays alive. Well, that's a pretty good combination then if you're going up against an SMU team that's their weakness. So I'm curious the game plan and how they approach it. Where they try and move the ball, I think will be really interesting.
Hopefully it's not a grinded out kind of thing.
Because they can try to. I mean, you can try and go with LJ Martin, Rapati, and try and rack up yards and see if you can get the running game going and say your best defense is just keeping SMU off the field. Maybe. But I don't know if that's going to work this weekend, and I don't know if it's going to work for the rest of the season. So I think you're right. You probably need to go flex some muscle and see what this offense can do.
I hope so. I mean, that's what we saw in Game 1. I think that's what BYU needs to do to win and win in the Big 12. Not a gimmicky air raid, but open it up and sling it. Can he throw it? Take advantage of the receivers.
Good
do
defense, high-level offense.
All right.
It's probably going to be their formula going forward.
Stay tuned. We'll have more Jake and Ben coming up straight ahead. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Your home for the best college football coverage in Utah is on the KSL Sports Zone. Ready? It's a Saturday matinee battle for the Utes as they welcome in Baylor to Rice-Eccles Stadium. Your home for the best coverage of Utah football is right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Two amigos on the airwaves, talking sports. They got him made Jake's and also loves his tie guy. Ben's got style with his scarves. Oh my.
Wrapping up Jake and Ben, this segment brought to you by Peach Doors and Windows. Amazing home transformations begin with Peach, where 5-star reviews are the norm. Call them today for your free in-home estimate, 801-566-1255. Also want to remind you to join Hans and Scotty coming up today from 1 to 3 for the Ute Preview Show, brought to you by Beehive Meals, proud meal partner for Utah Athletics. We also want to remind you about the RV Super Show. Find the largest and greatest selection of RVs in the state at the 2024 Utah RV Super Show, September 12th through the 15th at the Mountain America Expo Center. See the newest models as well as the best remaining inventory for this year. Visit kslsports.com/contests and enter to win a family 4-pack of tickets.
Tom Brady apparently did a season's worth of practice games with his play-by-play co-host to get ready for his debut this weekend.
Okay. I mean, I think he's going to stink.
Why?
Because you being the greatest football player of your generation has very little to do with how good a broadcaster you are.
Sure. What does that lead to him stinking?
I just don't expect very much. Do you? You expect him to reinvent the broadcast game one?
No, that's not what he's being asked to do.
I just don't think he'll be very good.
He's pretty smart. He's a little goofy. He may be too timid. I would worry about it, but I would probably rather him be a little timid and then fill it out than be overbearing. And I don't think he's a threat to be overbearing.
I'm not convinced he is smart. I mean, I don't think a smart person would have sat down to do that roast, for example.
No, that was poorly thought out.
And I don't know.
Not realizing that he was actually going to get roasted and his kids were going to get roasted and his marriage was former marriage was going to get roasted.
Yeah, and because you're football smart, that doesn't necessarily translate into broadcast smart or even smart. So that's why I'm just not convinced it's going to be great. I think you sign somebody like that for the name.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
And that's why they did it. And he certainly is happy to take the money.
Brady and play-by-play partner Kevin Burkhardt called 17 games last season as practice for the debut as a broadcasting duo.
Burkhardt rolling his eyes. Oh,
get me a pro here, please.
Oh.
I can't do.
Gotta hold
hands
here.
I don't have 17 full days to work on a game with you, Tom. Tell you what you did wrong.
That's what the reason I feel bad for Greg Olson is because he's good at it.
He is good.
He's really good at it. And he got leapt because Tom Brady is the QB of the dynasty of the Patriots or whatever. Now, Troy Aikman probably got the gig initially because he's Troy Aikman, and I actually think he's turned out to be pretty good. But Chris Collinsworth, who's kind of been the standard for a while now, he was good, not great, as the Bengals. I mean, he was like a Pro Bowler, like you knew who he was, yeah. But like he turned out to be a really good broadcaster. John Madden was a great coach, but nobody thought he was the greatest coach of all time.
Sure.
And turned out to be a great broadcaster.
I think Tom does have a vanity that actually lends itself to being good at this job because he does care that he sounds good. He is not – some guys roll in or just saying, well, look, I'm famous. I'll do whatever I want. I actually like that he's worked hard. If you go in and you say, well, I was hired for my name and I know football, like I played it for 22 years. There's nothing I'm going to see out there that I need to prepare for that I'm not going to be able to talk about correctly. I think that's a good sign. So I think it'll probably be a little bit weird in his first game, but I am certainly intrigued, and they are betting on people like me and my intrigue to tune in to gain them a lot of money. So I'm curious to watch it. I suspect he's going to do well. I don't know if he'll do it very long. He's not going to be in the booth 15 years from now still calling games. I have a really hard time seeing that.
Okay. Yeah, maybe.
I'm surprised he's doing it at all, other than they gave him, I'm sure, a blank check.
If he gets tired of it and leaves, it'll because he's not very good, and he'll get tired of people telling him he's not very good because he's used to everyone telling him how great he is.
And if he's good enough and doesn't love the workload, he can turn into Steve Young, who notoriously puts in very little work.
Well, he's not employed anymore.
Right, but Steve Young was doing Monday night or Sunday night football forever, whatever the NBC call was.
It was Monday night football, and it was ESPN.
But then he switched over to NBC, right, for a little while? He never did NBC?
Nope.
Oh, my apologies. But notoriously didn't put in very much work to do it because he was so smart and so good at it, he didn't have to do a whole lot.
Yeah, he had a law degree to prove that he is smart. Tom Brady's got a weird diet.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't think I don't know if he cares about sounding good. Is that a thing?
You don't think Tom Brady cares if he sounds good?
Yeah.
He just did these 17 games for nothing?
It's not hard to sit down and watch 17 football games.
I mean, I think to run through the practice of it is a lot. Certainly more than I think a lot of guys do.
I think Tom Brady's the type of person who will not do anything unless he's doing it at his best. Like, that's just the type of person he is. Like, he's not going to come in and slack at all. Not saying
I agree with you. No, I agree with you.
Because he's worried about what people think. Why did you do that roast then? That was the dumbest thing ever.
I do think he wanted to be somewhat approachable. And yeah, it was a mistake. I think that was a bad look for him. He certainly didn't like doing it. He chose to do it and then regretted doing it. And said he regretted doing it.
Yeah, I should have seen that one coming.
Probably. I don't think he has the skin for that type of thing.
If I were Tom, I wouldn't want to be an in-game analyst anyway. I'd rather be a studio analyst. I think that's a much easier job.
And that's kind of my thought, which is essentially what Steve did, right? Steve was a studio guy.
Yeah.
And I could see Tom Brady moving away from the Troy Aikman role as a color analyst and going to a studio somewhere.
Like, it's hilarious that everybody loved Tony Romo's gimmick for about 10 minutes, and now everybody hates Tony Romo, and Jim Nantz is talking about how he doesn't care
and that's
about the job.
That's Tony's part. He doesn't work hard.
Yeah, right.
He doesn't work hard. I don't know if Tom has that issue. I think Tom seems somewhat obsessive. And hence his, I don't eat any acidic food at all. I don't eat tomatoes because the acidity is bad for my recovery in football. I think he is a workaholic, and I think that will translate to the booth.
Yet Belichick was the volatile one. To Brady, do you remember that creep, weird doctor assistant that they had to ask not to come with the team anymore? Everybody loves the player. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what Brady does. All right, stay tuned. Hans and Scotty G are coming up next. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Jake and Ben.
Thanks, Christian.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.